First at 4, will there be a restaurant rebellion? Business owners meet to talk about COVID restrictions and what they stand to lose. We have their decision. We're also getting an update on how the state is targeting racial disparities connected to the coronavirus. We'll tell you where things stand. Plus, here's Paula.
Hi, Karen. You know, so many of us are hurting in so many different ways. Today, we convene a roundtable of religious leaders who try to light a path to healing with their advice. Ben.
Paula, the forecast is getting less flaky, but it's not getting any warmer as we head towards the upcoming weekend. We'll dig into it right now. First at 4.
Live from downtown Detroit, home of WDIV and Click on Detroit, Local 4 News First at 4 starts now.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Karen Drew. First at 4, growing COVID numbers and growing frustration with state restrictions. Could Michigan's current 3-week pause get extended? Now, we did just ask Governor Whitmer a short time ago.
I think a few more days of information in our belts will be in a much stronger position to really assess if there are some things that maybe are safer to do, but if we have to make some extensions of the current pause in some realms, and that is sadly possible because of the just sheer volume of COVID.
As the governor started speaking, many Michigan restaurant owners were holding a Zoom conference call to talk about defying that order if it does get extended. Kimberly Gill in the newsroom with that part of the story. Kim, any decisions made?
Hi, Karen. Good afternoon to you. Joe Vicari, the owner of Andiamo and several other restaurants, got this ball rolling with an open letter urging Michigan restaurants to reopen their dining rooms, even if the state extends the order beyond December 8th. But after the Zoom call, Vicari put that idea on hold, vowing to go to Lansing to look for compromise. During the calls, restaurant owners shared ideas and asked attorneys what risk they'd face legally if they defied a ban on indoor dining. One big risk, they could lose their liquor license. Some ideas for compromise: operating at 40% capacity and maybe changing hours of operation. But for now, Vicari is urging caution.
At the end of the day, I'm telling my fellow restaurateurs not to go against the ordinances because you're going to get shut down. It's going to cost you a lot more money than you want it to cost. And at the end of the day, you see what's happening in the ones that have already done it. You know, they're getting reprimanded, they're getting their liquor license taken away. And I made the decision, let's try, as I said before, to get an olive branch. Let's try to make it work.
Now, of course, it is not clear if all restaurant owners will go along with that decision. We've seen individual businesses defying government orders before, of course. Now, earlier today, the director of the state health department said given current case levels, there's no safe way for people to dine indoors in public. We'll see what happens as we get closer to that expiration date, with again is December 8th, which is next Tuesday. We're going to dig deeper to see what restaurants are facing and have more from the governor coming up tonight on Local 4 News at 5. Until then, we'll send it back to you, Karen.
All right. Thank you, Kim.
Sure.
Governor Whitmer did say COVID cases have leveled off a bit in the past few weeks, but they're still alarmingly high. We did just learn the state is reporting more than 7,100 cases in the past 24 hours. We've also seen another 175 deaths. That includes 112 from Vital Records Review. Right now, we're seeing 5 times the cases we saw just back in October, and about 81% of the ICU beds in the state are full. We're also getting an update on the state's COVID-19 task force on racial disparities. New numbers showing the average rate of cases and deaths among African Americans have declined since March and April. The report found black people were affected by the virus at a high rate at the start of the pandemic. Now, the state's top health official listed the other factors that likely contributed.
So if you think about early in the pandemic, when we said most individuals needed to stay at home, there were still essential workers who had to come out of their homes. Maybe they didn't have a car and they needed to share rides. Maybe they still had to go out to the grocery store and couldn't have delivery service. Or maybe they were frontline workers who sometimes tend to not make as much money, so they had to work in our grocery stores or drive our buses. So it's really about exposure and equity.
The task force has identified a number of areas to focus on in the coming months, and that includes closing the digital divide in telehealth and virtual learning to ensure equal access for all Michiganders. increasing enrollment in health insurance plans, and raising awareness of racial and ethnic disparities in medical care. Also, building mobile testing infrastructure that can also be used for vaccine distribution. Will Congress get a COVID relief bill passed before the new year? For a few minutes today, it seems Senator Majority Leader Mitch McConnell might be leaning toward a compromise. A bipartisan proposal unveiled this week would cost $908 billion. It would include extra unemployment of $300 a week, plus $160 billion for states and local governments, and $288 billion for paycheck protection at small businesses. McConnell said compromise was near, but listen to this.
Let's make law on all the subjects where we agree, on all the areas where President Trump is ready to sign bipartisan relief into law.
And the Republican leader came to the floor this morning to say compromise is within reach, his words, before reiterating a long list of Republican demands and blaming the Democrats for everything.
Congress also has to pass an overall spending bill by December 11th to avoid a government shutdown. We're getting another glimpse at how toxic the political arena is becoming here in Michigan. Today, the state's Legislative Black Caucus released a statement about new threats. The caucus says it has, quote, recently been informed that members of the Michigan Legislative Black Caucus have also been targeted with threats of physical violence, including death threats. We understand our jobs as legislators. However, some behaviors cross the line and should be admonished by all who are aware. We're looking into those threats and getting reaction. Our coverage continues tonight at 5. Well, we don't have to tell you, 2020 has been a difficult year on so many different fronts. Many of us are searching for ways to cope and learning and leaning on our faith. Well, today we have a special report from Paula Tutman, who assembled a group of faith leaders looking for a spiritual flashlight to light the way for all of us.
Today and every day, a group of interfaith leaders in the metro area are asking, what are you mourning? Is it that you've lost a loved one from COVID, or your business, or your job, or your home? Did you miss a wedding or a funeral? Did your candidate lose? Do you feel hopeless?
What we usually fill our fears with is some sort of controlling act that may pretend to us to get control of it. And that's one of the reasons I think that we've been devolving.
Today, we look for small ways to heal big wounds in an interfaith roundtable of religious and spiritual leaders, a bishop, a reverend, an imam, a rabbi, a Sikh, an activist, and the conveyor of a group that meets regularly and is taking on the issue of healing.
It began a long time ago with systemic racism that began to mushroom as we went into a political season that has existed, and then it was capped off with a pandemic called COVID-19.
And all agree that if we can narrow down to the most granular level possible, we as a people are grieving.
The pandemic brought out things that were already bubbling under the surface.
So we must first identify the source or sources of our personal grief.
We must dig deeper, and we must be willing to help.
And then with a mindful purpose, do the heavy climb uphill to look for ways to heal our own grief enough to reach out and assist in the grief of others.
I think we have to look at each other and see the good in each other and recognize all of these amazing things that are happening out there, how we are feeding the hungry and how we are helping people find homes and how we are facing racism.
I want to talk to somebody who doesn't agree with us or with me. If I want to talk to somebody who doesn't believe we're all equally human, who doesn't believe we're all connected, and who doesn't believe that my actions are affecting everybody else.
If you think about vaccination, it's there to create an immunity in you. And that's what I'm moving forward with in the new year. It's not just a physical vaccination from a COVID virus. It's a spiritual vaccination that we all need. And that spiritual vaccination is something we have to give ourselves every single time we have a thought that's not aligned with our humanity.
A vaccination works because you get some of the virus and then you build the antibodies. And I feel like naming the fear is the beginning of being able to create those antibodies.
Console one another, help one another to the best of our abilities so we can emerge once again, once this pandemic is over, and we will emerge hopefully stronger than we were before.
You know, it's really fascinating to listen to these faith leaders navigate how they want to talk to their houses of worship, and hopefully that message goes out into the community. Also, listening to their goggles, taking it out of anger, Karen, and looking at it as grief in order to help one another and vaccinate ourselves against our own demons.
So many interesting perspectives there, and I really like that part where you're mentioning about identifying that grief, what you are dealing with, and then how you're reacting many times in fear. Very, very important conversation to be had. Thank you, Paula. Now, let's get a quick check on our forecast, and we have seen some sunshine outside our studio, so that's always nice, brightens the day. Ben Bailey keeping his eyes on what's next. Hey, Ben.
Yeah, Karen, we're not going backwards with temperatures, thanks in part to that early sunshine. So even though we've been invaded by clouds here recently, we're still managed to make it to the 40s this afternoon. It's just slightly above average for this time of year. 42 in Detroit, Pontiac, one of the warmer spots at 44. Just a little bit of a wind out there, but enough to put wind chills into the mid-30s. Those feels like temperatures a little bit cooler. Taking a quick check of the weekend, we're looking at numbers that are going to be slightly cooler for both Saturday and Sunday. And notice that there are a few flakes possible on that Sunday shot. We also could see some tomorrow as well, so we'll look closer at that, and a little bit of a rebound as we get later into the 7-day forecast. All that's ahead in just a few minutes.
All right, thank you. Still ahead, take a look at those cute little faces right there. If you're tempted to buy a dog this holiday season, we have a Help Me Hank scam alert for you. We'll talk about one big red flag that something might be wrong. Also, the Great Barrier Reef at risk, why one conservation group is sounding the alarm today about one of the Earth's most beautiful landmarks. Our first, earthquake impact, caught on camera, store shelves shaking, products falling. Plus, we'll show you how one guy ran from his desk just in time. That's next, first at 4.